Today I'm going to be planting out this bed with some spices, aka rhizomes. I have different types of gingers and turmerics that I will be planting out. I'll talk to you guys a little bit about what these varieties are in a bit, and I'll share the care guides and the way I prepped up the soil, the fertilizer, water needs, and how much sun these require as I plant these out with you. I'll also talk about how these rhizomes got started indoors. You guys know how much I love growing scented plants, especially herbs and spices, things that are so nice when you pick them fresh to use versus buying in the stores. You don't get as much of a variety as growing your own. So let's go through the ones I have here.
I believe this is the common variety of turmeric known as curcuma. I'm not 100% on this since I didn't get to label them before the plants went dormant last year. Besides the variegation on the leaves, the shape does remind me a lot like the common variety.
So I'm just gonna put this here. Here's another turmeric, which gives a really bright golden yellow orange pigment. Now turmerics can grow really well in full sun or part shade, but in a Southern California zone 10, we have a pretty dry kind of a heat. So the leaves are not going to stay that pretty. A lot of times they will get burned, but the more sun you expose the plant to, you do get larger and more bigger clumps of the rhizomes. I'm going to be growing everything that I'm planting in this bed today, and this is on the shade side of the patio garden. This side of the garden does get a few hours of full sun during the warmer times of the year. Now that I have an elevated bed, I really see the difference in growing things even in the winter. Being lifted higher, they are able to get more exposure to light. So yeah, this is really helpful, and then having a pretty good depth in this raised bed would allow for good drainage, and I'll be able to grow a more variety of plants. Here's a black turmeric. You really can't get confused with other varieties because of that beautiful deep streak in the center of the leaf. This one was placed in a more shaded area last year. It was exposed to a bit of sun until other plants around were just growing too lush. So it didn't do too well. Hopefully in this year, it'll do better being placed in more sun. When you break up the rhizome, it actually has a bit of that light blue color. It's really pretty. It's more medicinal versus like turmeric. Well, turmeric also has medicinal benefits, but the turmeric, you use it more for cooking. Whereas this one, I'm not too familiar with how you use it in food, but it's mainly, I think, used as more like a remedy or like a holistic medicine. And then another kind of turmeric is the emperor turmeric. This one has a light variegation to the leaves. You can see the outline and a little bit of streaks of the white. What makes the plant green is the chlorophyll. So when you see that there's white in these areas, there's actually no chlorophyll, which means it's more likely to get burned, and it does slow down the growth, or it takes longer for the plants to grow because there's less green. Because of that reason, I'm going to place it right over here with a bit more shade by the yukon, which grows so large and so fast this season right next door. Hopefully that would provide some bright filtered light for parts of the day for this turmeric. I have grown this one in the sunny side before, and it grew pretty well, but on the extreme hot days, like when it hit 88 or 90 plus degrees, I did put a cloth to filter out the sun a bit. The rhizome for this variety looks very similar to the regular turmeric. I haven't gotten a chance to break it up to see what it looks like on the inside, but it's probably yellow, may not be as deep yellow or orange as the regular curcumin that we know of. This isn't my first year of growing it, but we did have a lot of winter rain and I didn't get to digging up these plants in time. A lot of it had rotted out, so it's almost like I'm starting this plant fresh again. The next set I'll be sharing with you are the gingers. This is the common ginger, the kind that you can easily purchase at farmers markets or grocery stores. So if you want to grow ginger or turmeric, you can pick up, the common varieties at your local grocery stores. But get the organic kind, it'll have a better chance of sprouting. It's already pushing, it really wants to grow. I might put this one in a different bed. I think I want to save this bed for the more rare varieties. I think these are more gingers. This is what happens if you forget to label things. This is a ginger for sure though. It's got a very pointy start of that first leaf. Here I have a sand ginger. This is very popular in Southeast Asian cooking. This ginger has a much more, I want to say, aromatic but mellow at the same time. It doesn't have that floral and spicy kick as the regular ginger. Here's another sand ginger. It's got eaten up. It could be slugs. I put this one outside to start acclimating to the weather. Just for the very first night, it got eaten up. Sometimes when you don't know what kind of pest is, invading your garden, you might want to come out here at different times of the day. Sometimes you'll find different kinds at night as well. And when I come out here at night, I see lots of slugs. So this is probably what happened. And usually a good indication of slugs is if you find some kind of like slimy, shiny, kind of like a layer around some parts of the leaves. Yeah, so when I plant this out, I probably would place a dome on it for a little while until I see that a plant gets more established. Sand ginger grows lower to the ground compared to other gingers and turmerics. Gingers and turmerics grow between 3 to 5 feet tall if you give it really nourishing soil and lots of sun. Turmerics can even grow up to like almost 6 feet. That's never happened to me here because I don't get that kind of crazy sun. But compared to the sand gingers, it's more like low to the ground, so it's really good as like something to plant underneath your turmerics or larger plants. I think I'll be planting the sand ginger under the yukon so it provides nice filtered bright light for it. Oh goodness, yeah, they're starting to eat up even this from the center. Oh goodness. The last variety I'm going to share is the shampoo ginger. This one I'm really eager to see it flower because last year it grew really well in a mostly sunny area, more like sunny but also bright light, and it grew 3.5 feet, I want to say 3.5 to 4 feet tall. Lots of beautiful green growth, but I don't know why it didn't bloom last year. So hopefully by growing this in a little more shade, it'll like the environment more and flower, because shampoo ginger is actually, it can have medicinal benefits if you know how to use it, but what it's known for is that the flower that's supposed to smell really good. Some really nice shampoo would use the fragrance of this flower, and all you have to do is kind of like squeeze that flower and it'll produce this beautiful aromatic water you can use to wash your hair with. If you leave the flower on the plant, the water in the flower will just refill itself after you squeeze some of it to use. So I would be so thrilled if I get to try this out. In the tropics, you would find these in the jungles. They'll just grow underneath the trees and all that. So they do like probably dabbled sun and indirect bright sunlight. All right, so if you're curious about how I got these plants started, being in Southern California, these sort of tropical plants do die back. Usually if we don't get very wet winter, you can leave the rhizomes in the ground. But previous winter we had more rain than like the past, I don't know, 10, 15 years or something. So a lot of the rhizomes and tubers did rot it out. But yeah, you're supposed to dig up the rhizomes after the plants die back. Even if you live somewhere colder, obviously where it freezes over, you would have to dig up these rhizomes. What I like to do is just dig up some of the native soil with the rhizomes and just store it in the garage. For gingers and turmerics, I like storing them in like a 5-gallon bucket. I also drilled some holes all along the top for ventilation, and then I'll be able to keep the lid on and keep stacking my buckets. And I keep the soil lightly misted inside. I don't water it like a regular plant. Just keep the soil on a dry but slightly moist side. That's about it. And then when it's time to plant it, I just like to lay it on a tray. Here's a tray with some of the rhizomes I still have in here. These are the shampoo gingers that have sprouted. I have this on top of a heating mat. If you don't use a heating mat, it'll just take longer for them to sprout. But yeah, you just cover the rhizomes lightly with soil and keep it moist and some humidity with the dome on. And that would encourage them to sprout. The soil in this bed is well draining. Most tubers, I would say, would prefer well-draining soil. In my experience, they seem to prefer even more well-drained soil than just regular vegetables. The materials I have in this bed are compost, potting soil. I like using the Ocean Forest Fox Farm, but you can use any kind of organic soil that you can find, or even digging up a little bit of your native soil. That's fine too, because you're going to be mixing with a bunch of other things. And then I have vermiculite, sand, and perlite in here. If I feel like it needs more of that fluffiness, I'll add some cocoa coir in it. And then you can just mix in with some of your organic fertilizer of your choice. For drainage, I'd say sand works the best and is also the cheapest, but I was not able to put too much of that because sand does weigh the most and I have an elevated raised bed. So yeah, I didn't want this box to be too heavy. That's why I also mixed in perlite and vermiculite. But I really like vermiculite because it improves drainage but also holds moisture at the same time, which is really great for, you know, tropical like moisture loving plants, but they also don't want to sit in water. That's why I think the mix of those three are just they work really well for me. I also like to add worm castings to 1 or 2 inches on top of the beds, mix it in. The fertilizer I used to freshen up this bed was, I think it's a 444 Climate Guard fertilizer. Then the other fertilizer I'm going to put in right now is this one. I happen to have this one in hand, that's why I'm showing it to you guys. But I'm going to add this one just on the top layer and work it in like the first few inches and then start planting this out. Here's my placement. Pretty much have shampoo ginger between every turmeric. Espoma makes all kinds of fertilizers. Even their plant tone would be fine to use for organic gardens. But this one, I like that the NPK has higher phosphorus and potassium, whereas the plant tone has higher nitrogen. Since I'm growing tubers or rhizomes, I thought the garden tone would work better for this situation. Okay, let's work this in. This is a 344. That's all I need. Damn. What's also nice about this fertilizer is that it has the beneficial bacteria for your garden. Okay, the fertilizer's worked in. I'm gonna place the plants to see where I want them to be. I guess this could be on that side against there. This is the common variety ginger, so I'm going to plant this elsewhere. Oh, the soil's so dry, even though I water it pretty often. When you put it under with a heating mat underneath it, things dry out very fast. But yeah, they do like the warmth and the humidity and the moisture. That's what gets rhizomes to start, really, to sprout. Which one should I go for? Maybe this one? All right, to start planting this is where I'll be planting. Okay, that's pretty good. When transplanting, you can just dig a hole and simply put the plant in place. But what I like to do is to give the plants a little bit of a boost by using some worm castings. If I had mine available, I would put that in, but mine's actually a little hard to get to right now. It's just a mess back there. Otherwise, I would mix mine and something else. In this case, I'm gonna be using the SD microbes. This is the BioVast VermiCompost. When they make this on site, they actually leave this out for at least 6 months or more. This overall process provides a balance of beneficial biology and minerals to promote plant and soil health. Next, I like to add some kind of mycorrhiza. Okay, plant, I hope you enjoy your new home. And I have this mixture really loose, so if I move this too much, it's gonna fall apart. Okay, a little bit more. A little bit more of that vermicompost. And good luck. All right, next up is the shampoo ginger. Sometimes finding the most ideal place to grow is not as easy as you think, especially when you're in an urban setting with very limited space. You just have to find the best spot you got and just give it a go. For me here, it's in part shade, but hopefully I get about 4 to 6 hours of sun here. In a hot, dry climate, I might be able to get away growing them in part shade, providing them about something close to 6 hours of direct sun and providing them shade in the afternoon. I'm hoping I get between 4 to 6 hours in this part shade area. This means my harvest won't be as abundant as growing in more sun, but this is the best spot I have here, so I gotta work with it. Especially since I had a really late start here. These rhizomes require at least 6 to 10 months to develop. Can you see? Can you see the worm? Oh my gosh, there's 3 worms in here.
The longer you let them grow, the bigger the rhizomes would get. That's why in cooler climates, it's highly encouraged that you start these indoors and grow them in containers so that they could be moved outside after the last day of frost and moved back in right before the first day of frost so that plants can continue to grow to finish its full term.
Woo, so beautiful. It's definitely time to plant.
So growing in a cooler climate, you definitely need to give them more sun. The colder the place is, the more sun you got to give them. At least 8 hours of sunlight.
So I decided not to plant the sand ginger just yet until I know for sure where I want it to go. Sometimes when I'm unsure, I would just keep the plant in its pot and move it around certain places and maybe place it here for, a week or two to see if it likes its home. If it does, then I will plant it. If not, I'll move it. So I'm thinking it's either going to be here in the front row here, keep everything within like the whole ginger and turmeric family here, or I would put it right here where it gets filtered light through the Yukon. But today is kind of a more gloomy day. It's hard to really gauge how much light it actually gets down here. Right now it seems like it's way too dim, but on a really bright day it might seem like it's enough brightness. So we'll see. I think I'll have to give it a few more days before I actually plant them. When done planting, don't forget to water the plants, give them a big welcome to their new home. And then I will put some mulch on top. That would be it.
Finally, wherever you're growing them in the world, be sure to maintain the soil moist. When the plant goes through a long drought, it's going to slow down its growth, especially you'll notice it in the rhizomes. Oh, and one more thing. Even though I'm growing it in technically a container, of course you can grow these in the ground as well.
Thank you so much for joining me to plant this out. For plant seeds and for the materials that I've used in this video, I will link it down below for you. If you want to see more videos of gingers and turmerics, be sure to check out that one and subscribe to this channel for more. I'll see you soon. Bye.